The moon in the lake. Nearby the lake, the forest animals were fighting and quarreling most of the time. They would tease and bother each other, but it was mostly Mr. Rabbit's doing. Usually the fights would not last for long, and the animals would lie under the sun all together, laughing and loving each other. It was during these times that Mr. Rabbit found himself extremely bored. "Boring, boring! Oh, so boring!" he would say to his dear friend, Mrs. Turtle. "We need to find something entertaining to do."
"You are with no doubt the biggest trickster," said the turtle. "With you, no one can ever get bored. What are you up to again?"
Mr. Rabbit got serious. "I'm not up to something. I just want to organize a friendly fishing night at the lake under the beautiful moonlight," he said. But his eyes sparkled mischievously. "You go now to invite Mrs. Fox, Captain Bear, and Lord Wolf, and tell them that I will be expecting them tomorrow evening for fishing. You're also kindly invited, Mrs. Turtle." The rabbit winked at her.
"Oh, I wouldn't miss it,"
giggled Mrs. Turtle. While Mr. Rabbit went to bed, Mrs. Turtle went off to invite everybody, exactly as the rabbit had instructed her to do.
"If I start right away, I will be able to make it on time tomorrow evening."
The next evening, all the animals met by the lake. Mrs. Fox was holding her fishing gear, Captain Bear brought his fish net, and Lord Wolf was holding a fish pole. Mr. Rabbit was waiting for them sitting on a rock. "It is a lost cause, my friends," he said, pretending to be sad. "What? But why?" asked the animals. "There was an accident that you were not here to witness. The moon fell into the water. Unfortunately, fishing is cancelled. Let's head back to our homes." "Is this for real? Did the moon actually fall into the water?" "Of course. If you do not believe me, take a look for yourselves." Mrs. Fox, Captain Bear, and Lord Wolf bent over the water and saw indeed the moonlight reflecting from the bottom of the lake.
"Too bad. I was planning to fish me some bass,"
said Mrs. Fox.
"I was planning on catching an eel,"
said Captain Bear.
"And I was planning to fish a nice big trout,"
said Lord Wolf.
"And I was planning to find me a tasty little frog,"
said Mrs. Turtle.
"What were your plans for tonight, Mr. Rabbit?"
the turtle asked. "No one is catching anything," the rabbit replied, "unless we take first the moon out of the water." The other animals sat there patiently waiting for Mr. Rabbit to think of something clever. He pretended to be thinking. Finally, he stood up and said, "This is it! I found it! I'm going to go over to Mrs. Otter's and ask for her professional fishing net, which is large and strong. We need something big to fish the moon. It is very heavy, since it is made of pure gold. Wait right here. Don't move until I come back," he said, and left running. Well, he did not go far. He hid behind the reeds and watched silently. "Pure gold, huh?" he murmured. Let's see now how quickly they will catch the bait. As soon as the rabbit left, Captain Bear gathered everybody.
Quick, let's get the moon out of the water by ourselves so that we can split it before Mr. Rabbit gets back.
And he laid on his belly, sticking his foot into the water, trying to catch the moon. But the moon was drifting away as he was approaching it, till suddenly Captain Bear lost his grip and fell with his head into the lake.
There is no point. We need to throw the fishing net,
he said as he was coming out of the water. They all stood by the lake and threw the fishing net as far as they could. Then they pulled it, but the moon was still in the lake. They threw it back in, and it came back empty.
We are not throwing it far and deep enough, said Mrs. Fox. We need to get in the water and throw the fishing net on top of the moon.
So they all went into the cold water, but the result remained the same. They tried and tried deeper and deeper, but the moon could not be caught. Finally, Lord Wolf slipped. He sank deep in the lake without letting go of the fishing net. This way, he dragged in Mrs. Fox also, who was holding the fishing net tight, and sank with him. Captain Bear, who also had his grip on the net, followed them, sinking. They were all now deep in the cold water, trying to float, hitting the water, fighting to get to the shore, screaming and yelling. Mr. Rabbit came out of his hideout and started laughing so hard. Mrs. Turtle was also laughing with tears. Meanwhile, Captain Bear, Lord Wolf, and Mrs. Fox had managed to reach the shore, wet and muddy, blaming each other.
You pulled me! You were holding the net tight. Whose idea was it? My shoes are full of mud.
Mr. Rabbit was laughing and laughing. Here they are, he thought to himself, and approached them to offer to help them. All the animals looked at him angrily.
You sneaky rabbit, you,
said Lord Wolf, looking at the moon up in the sky. Mrs. Turtle approached and asked him,
You, Mr. Rabbit, you never told us what you were planning to catch tonight.
Oh, yes, I didn't say, did I? Replied Mr. Rabbit. Well, you see, Mrs. Turtle, I was planning to catch 2 or 3 fools, and with the moon shining bright, it seems I had a great catch.